What's up, everybody? It is January 17th, 2023. Got another video here for everyone. So, the topic is based off of a couple interesting videos that I linked down below, two videos that I watched over the weekend here. And the one of the videos is it's about an hour, a little over an hour, and it's on the Great Depression here in the United States. Um, I haven't honestly watched a lot of documentaries on the Great Depression, um, but it's something that I wanted to learn more about. So this is just one of the videos that I found that I thought was interesting. Free documentary on YouTube, and then the other one was. A video from, I believe, CNBC Make It, where they profile like how different people, um, what lifestyles they live based off their finances and things like that, their income. And it was on a guy that spends from the U.S. and spends his time as a digital nomad living between Mexico City and I believe Bangkok, Thailand. So I just thought there were two obviously, uh, you know, economic finance related videos that I thought were interesting. And I guess I'll start with the video on the Great Depression. It had a bunch of different I guess celebrities and things like that, who either their parents or they grew up close to to the depression. One of them was Ben Stiller's father, Jerry Stiller, was in the video. So that guy's kind of hilarious. I love that guy. But I'd like to play just part of just a little clip um, out of that depression video that I thought was interesting. That kind of um, went over the psychological toll that the depression had on people. So let me play that real quick.
If you're going to function, you have to be certain about some things. You have to be pretty certain about who you trust, who loves you, where the next meal is going to come from, and what you're going to do if it rains. You have to have that stuff figured out so that you can take risks and grow and all the other things that are so much fun to do. Now, when that stuff gets disturbed, it's physically and emotionally terrible. There's a wonderful study that research teams went around the country doing these in-depth interviews, and they were trying to discover all kinds of things about how the depression had affected people psychologically. There was one consistent finding that they found in case after case after case, that the unemployed man felt personally guilty and ashamed, mortified, embarrassed, humbled that he had been put in this situation. Now, we can look back historically and think, well, wait a minute. This unemployed man we're talking about here should have looked around him and seen there were 12,999,999 other people unemployed. And it wasn't that he had suddenly personally failed or lost his moral fiber, but the reflex of all kinds of unemployed people was to blame themselves for their situation and not to blame the system. So this was an impediment to collective political action. It was something Franklin Roosevelt remarked repeatedly to his campaign entourage during the presidential campaign of 1932. He said, this is the worst crisis this country has faced since the Civil War. And why aren't people in the streets? Why aren't they rioting? Why aren't they demanding a political response to this?
Okay, so I thought that was just kind of an interesting little piece of information out of that documentary about FDR's administration and how they were talking amongst themselves about why aren't people, in the streets and more pissed off, which I'm sure they were a little bit, but I'm sure there were protests, but why was there not more, um, that people were doing to, whatever, protest the current conditions in the country. So I just think that's interesting that, you know, from a whatever, like a psychological perspective, that people, when it comes to an economic situation, people will tend to, you know, uh, beat themselves up first personally, rather than, is there something wrong in our society, something that could be working better, something like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought it also somewhat related to, today's world, where you have social media and people are, comparing their lives to, other people on social media, which is obviously, people only present the best things in their life and put it out onto, generally put it on, whatever social media. So it creates like this distorted, maybe, viewpoint of yourself, versus you're looking at everybody else. So I just thought it was kind of interesting, and I think you can, make some parallels today as far as what's going on in our current economic climate and how people deal with the situation. Well, it's not always they deal with the situation in the most logical way, and they, stand up and, um, whatever, fight the political leaders, or fight the system that's in power, and say, hey, we need to demand this and this, or we need to do this differently to create a better, living or working standards for ourselves. People will probably, more often than not, destroy themselves. So I think you see that a lot in this country when you look at, um, uh, just the decline of people, the drug use, the, whatever it is. I mean, people will tend to destroy themselves, versus, sometimes doing something more productive to either help themselves, or help the system to get better. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then in this other video, it's a video, like I said, on this guy that's from the U.S., and is a digital nomad. And that's one thing that I think that is obviously different about our current time, versus, like, you look at a time like the Great Depression in the US, you have a different, just the technology is totally different. You have uh, different things that you can do, as far as, people can travel all over the world, and you can potentially work as a digital nomad and live, anywhere in the world. So I think that is something that, if you are younger, or you are in the space where you can work remotely, that could be, a good option for you, if you want to maybe increase your living standards. Um, the U.S. is pretty expensive to live in. If you're living in any major city, the cost of living is going to be, probably pretty high. So um, I think you saw over the pandemic, you saw a lot of people who could move out of, bigger cities. They were doing that. Um, and they were moving to, uh, whatever areas that were less populated, or had maybe, maybe a higher living standard, if they could do that and they could work remotely. So I think, uh, that trend is probably going to continue. Um, Especially when you see the decline, and the decline of living standards in these big cities, and you're still, the cost of living is through the roof. So I think a lot of people are going to be looking outside of the U.S. potentially. I know for me personally, Thailand is somewhere that I'm very interested in. Um, and I would love, maybe in the future, uh, to live there. I think it'd be interesting. I think it'd be fun. Who knows? It could be for a few years, or it could be the rest of your life. But I think, um, people should be less scared of maybe trying out living in another country. I think today more than ever that could be a good option for some people. So let me just play real quick, just part of that video here. Again, they're both linked down below. They're both good.
I don't really have any plans to move back to the US. I plan to keep Thailand as one of my bases for the foreseeable future. I find living outside of the States a bit more interesting. It's fascinating to learn about different cultures and have authentic foods around the world, as well as just interact with different people with different ideas. I find the States to be a bit complicated the last few years, and it doesn't really feel like it's getting better. If you're looking to become a digital nomad and live around the world, my first advice is to try to have either some level of savings or ideally a low level of income that is already being generated on the internet. I think if you're looking.
So yeah, I mean, that was just a short little portion of that. But like I said, being able to, I think, work online or having some sort of savings and you're going over to another country and starting a business, that's, obviously um, the more ideal route to take. So, um, again, I just thought that was interesting. And I think if there is another downturn, whatever, worldwide or in the US, I think if you have that option to work remotely, you could have a better lifestyle. You could have a better living standard. Like he had said that I can't remember what exactly he said, but he's like, he doesn't see things getting better in the U.S. Things being a little complicated. I think that's definitely true. I think you know um, these bigger cities are becoming uh, somewhat more dangerous. So it's like if you can be in a better position somewhere else and have a better living standard, then why not do that? So, um, and then going back to the Great Depression, video, it was interesting to watch that and have people in that video talk about how economists were brought in to you know, study what happened in our economy that caused the Great Depression. And, basically at the end of the day, it's, it's just like everything else. Nobody ever agrees 100% on, this is what caused this situation happen. Um, and we fixed the issue, so it's never going to happen again. It's definitely a possibility. It definitely could happen again. So, um, if you are in the US and whatever, you don't have the means to move to another country, I think just keeping like the most, um, basic principles that everybody knows about, but trying to stay true to those principles of, maintaining low debt, um, things like that. That's what you want to try to do. That's hard to do today, especially when people are whatever. You graduate high school, you immediately go to college, and people are, it's normalized that you just take on a bunch of debt. So and also what I thought was interesting in that depression video, they talked about a short portion of it talked about um, the economic crisis that happened in Japan, and just as far as how the like uh, they were talking to one guy, and the what you're taught in growing up in school is that the economy is going to continue to boom. The living standards are going to be maintained, and the whole idea was, whatever, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get out of college, you go to some corporation and you work for that corporation for the rest of your life. Kind of how it used to be in the US. It's definitely no longer like that anymore. But what a shock it was to those people, um, when they found out that they graduated college and they could not get a good job. Um, so I think people should just keep that in mind. Like how it is here in the US is like, if you want to move up, people basically hop from job to job to job versus you're with one corporation and you could potentially grow within that corporation your whole career. That seems to be kind of shot for most people. So, um, in my eyes, if you're more, flexible, whatever, maybe a little bit more entrepreneurial, you can find out a way to make money online, maintain low debt. Even if you can't get out of the US, I think there's other options that are still, um, fun and can still be, a way that is exciting to live for you. Maybe you're into the whole van life thing, or maybe you're into just hopping from city to city and renting a place, a furnished place, and working, and maybe not so focused on collecting a bunch of material possessions. Anyways, I think there's a whole host of options that, are out there for people that are makes it a little bit, um, makes it a little bit easier than it was for people during the Great Depression. So, um, anyways, I think that's kind of all I have to say on those two videos for today. It's just kind of a short one, but again, they're both pretty interesting, especially the Depression one. I'll link them down below, and I'll be back tomorrow for another video on another topic. All right, peace.